Scott Milo Posey came into the world on a quiet day marked more by feeling than ceremony. His first cry cutting cleanly through the stillness like a promise being kept. He was small, warm, and alive with a stubborn strength that showed itself immediately, curling his fingers as if already holding on to the life ahead of him. Those who gathered around him spoke softly, sensing that this was a beginning worth remembering, a moment where past and future briefly met. His name carried echoes of those who came before him, and as he slept, the room seemed to settle, as though the world had shifted just enough to make space for who he would become. Scott was the kind of young boy who greeted each day with an hour-long conversation, always thinking, always learning by doing. He spent his afternoons exploring fence lines, creek beds, and fields, turning ordinary places into worlds shaped by his imagination. Scraped knees and muddy boots never bothered him. They were simply proof that the day had been lived fully. He listened closely to the stories of older relatives, carrying their lessons with him even when he ran off to play. Even then, there was a steady kindness about Scott Milo, a sense that he was growing into someone who understood both where he came from and where he hoped to go. Scott Milo Posey became a name people in Cedar Hill, said with pride on Friday nights under the stadium lights. As a star football player, he carried himself with the same steady confidence he'd shown as a boy, combining grit, discipline, and an instinct for the game that couldn't be taught. Whether breaking through the line or lifting up a teammate after a hard play, Scott played with heart as much as skill, earning the respect of coaches and crowds alike. Each roar from the stands echoed years of early mornings, worn cleats, and determination, and though the scoreboard told part of the story, it was Scott's leadership and love for the game that made his legacy shine brightest on that Cedar Hill field. When football season ended and the lights dimmed, Scott's dedication never wavered. It simply shifted classrooms. While many knew him for his strength on the field, those closest to him understood that his discipline ran deeper than athletics. He stayed late with textbooks spread across his desk, asked thoughtful questions, and held himself to the same high standard he demanded during practice. On graduation day in Cedar Hill, when Scott stepped to the podium as valedictorian, the crowd rose in surprise and admiration, realizing they had witnessed something rare. His speech was humble and sincere, honoring teachers, teammates, and family, and it became clear that his greatest victories were not only won under stadium lights, but through perseverance, balance, and a belief that excellence should touch every part of life. After graduating at the top of his class, Scott Milo Posey took his drive and determination to the University of Texas, leaving behind familiar fields for the relentless energy of Austin. Though he had once been a standout beneath Friday night lights, he willingly stepped into a quieter role with the football program as a water boy, carrying it out with humility and pride. From the sidelines, he learned a different kind of discipline, anticipating needs before they were spoken, working without recognition, and supporting the team in ways few noticed but all depended on. Wrapped in burnt orange, Scott came to understand that true leadership wasn't always about being seen. Sometimes it was about showing up every day with consistency and heart. Through long practices and game days, his love for football only deepened, grounded in respect for every role that made success possible. It was during this season of his life that Scott met Miss Texas on a warm evening filled with promise. She moved with grace and confidence, yet it was her genuine laughter and steady spirit that captured his attention, revealing a strength that was both quiet and enduring. Their relationship unfolded quickly and with certainty, built on shared values, late-night conversations, and a mutual belief in a future together. In 1988, before the next chapter began, they married, not in pursuit of spectacle, but out of commitment and trust. When Scott prepared to leave, he carried with him more than ambition or resolve. He carried the love of his wife, a bond strong enough to endure distance and sacrifice. Before long, another calling rose above lectures and sidelines alike. It was the same pull that had guided generations of his family, a deep-rooted sense of duty to serve something greater than himself. With quiet determination, Scott left the university and enlisted in the United States Marines, choosing a harder path out of respect for those who had gone before him. The training tested him physically and mentally, distilling life down to discipline, brotherhood, and purpose. Yet he met each challenge with the same focus that had defined him in school and sport. For Scott Milo Posey, service was not a departure from his journey, but its natural continuation, an honor carried forward through family legacy, sacrifice, and unwavering commitment. After his service ended, Scott returned home carrying both discipline and restlessness, unsure where the next chapter would lead. Remembering stories of his great-great-grandfather, a man known in the family as the Monster for his relentless work ethic and larger-than-life presence, Scott poured that legacy into an idea of his own, an energy drink he boldly named Monster. He mixed formulas late at night, imagined labels, and chased the spark of building something from nothing. Yet practicality won out over ambition. Doubting the drink had a future beyond a small market, Scott chose to sell the idea and move on. Years later, when Monster rose to become the most popular energy drink on the market, Scott felt no regret, only quiet satisfaction in knowing he had trusted his judgment and stayed true to his path. After leaving the world of business behind, Scott Milo Posey found his stride in a profession that suited his patience, precision, and love of the land: surveying. What began as a practical career quickly became a calling, as Scott developed an almost uncanny ability to read terrain, lines, and boundaries with clarity others admired. Under the Texas sun, he worked long days with quiet focus, earning a reputation as a super surveyor for his accuracy, reliability, and problem-solving instincts. Developers trusted him, landowners respected him, and younger surveyors sought his guidance. In measuring land, Scott found balance, connecting his past of discipline and service with a future built on steady purpose, proving once again that success didn't need applause to be real. After decades of steady work, Scott Milo Posey finally set his equipment down, closing a chapter defined by precision, endurance, and quiet excellence. Retirement didn't slow him so much as it redirected his energy, giving him time to reflect on the stories he'd collected along the way, from football fields and marine training grounds to survey lines stretching across Texas. Scott discovered that even without a uniform or tools in hand, he still had something valuable to offer: experience, insight, and a story worth telling. Perhaps a new venture is on the horizon. Maybe a podcast, if you know what I mean.